Welcome to meeting number 28 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Pursuant to order of reference of Wednesday, February 24th, 2021, and the motion adopted by the committee on March 9, 2021, the committee is resuming its study of Bill C-206, an act to amend the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, qualifying farming fuel. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House of Order, January 25th, 2021, and therefore members are attending in person, in the room, and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of this committee. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all participants that to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Pour garantir le bon déroulement de cette
I would like to tell you about certain rules before speaking. Wait for me to name you. If you are participating by video conference, click on the microphone to deactivate the mute. The microphones in this room will be controlled by the officer. I must remind you that all observations of MPs must be addressed to the presidents. Je vais donc
for the processing capacity report and approve the budget for the study of Bill C-205. This will only take a couple of minutes. So now I'd like to welcome our witness. We have today for our first panel from the Canadian Horticulture Council, Aaron Corstein, Chair, Energy, Environment, and Climate Change Working Group. So welcome, Aaron Corstein. And also we have Linda Deli Santi, Chair of the Greenhouse Vegetable Working Group. Welcome again, Miss Santi, to our panel. And from the National Farmers Union, we have Katie Ward, President and Farmer. So with that, we'll start our question panel, and let me just grab my. Okay, so with the first panel, we have 6 minutes each, and we'll start with Miss Rood for 6 minutes. Oh, sorry, yeah, I jumped over the opening statements. Sorry about that. Let's go back to a Canadian Hort Council, and whoever wants to take the opening statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You had me worried that I had missed something.
No, it's all yours.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today to provide testimony on Bill C-206. My name is Aaron Corstein, and I'm the Science, Regulatory Affairs, and Government Relations Manager at Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers. Today, I'm here to represent the broader fruit and vegetable sector as chair of the Canadian Horticultural Council's Energy, Environment, and Climate Change Working Group. By way of introduction, the CHC is an Ottawa-based national association representing over 14,000 fruit and vegetable growers across Canada involved in the production of over 120 different crops with $5.4 billion in farm cash receipts in 2019. Canada's fruit and vegetable growers are committed to being a part of the climate solution, while also playing a major role in food security and Canada's economic recovery. CHC and our members have consistently and actively engaged with the federal government to ensure carbon pricing policies connect the dots between the costs on carbon pollution, the desired behaviors and outcomes versus unintended impacts, and overall lowered emissions. Our consistent request has been for federal leadership to ensure that carbon pricing exemptions and relief are extended to the full range of farmers, including greenhouse growers, across all main fuel types, including natural gas and propane, used in common agricultural machinery. In short, carbon pricing policies need to better reflect modern agricultural practices across Canada, support increased security of food production and sovereignty, and minimize competitiveness impacts across provincial boundaries and with our major international trading partners. CHC is interested in more information on the delivery of the government's commitment in Budget 2021 to return a portion of the proceeds generated from carbon pricing directly to farmers in backstop jurisdictions. Concerns with other GGPPA definitions are those such as CHC supporting Bill C-206 and its expanded definition of qualifying farming fuels to include natural gas and propane. Although it falls beyond the specific scope of this bill, we also believe it is critical to amend other definitions in the GGPPI to ensure Bill C-206 achieves its intended outcomes. More specifically, in the legislation, the definition of eligible farming machinery is defined to explicitly exclude property that is used to heat or cool a building. As a result, certain farm machinery, when used to heat and cool a building, would, regardless of the fuel type, necessitate regulatory inclusion as a prescribed property to attain carbon pricing relief.
And thank you, Aaron, and I'll continue on. My name is Linda Delasanti. I am the Executive Director of the BC Greenhouse Growers Association and Chair of the Canadian Horticulture Council Greenhouse Vegetable Working Group. My greenhouse career started in 1982 when my husband and I built our first greenhouse. I was the grower and operator. We grew beefsteak tomatoes for 14 years and then red bell peppers for another 14 years. The BC carbon tax on fuel was started in 2008. The greenhouse sector was able to get relief of 80% of carbon tax paid in 2012. Unfortunately, the carbon tax took its toll on our family farm. We stopped growing at the end of 2009. At that time, I was already the CHC Greenhouse Vegetable Working Group Chair, and in 2010, I became the Executive Director of the BC Greenhouse Growers Association. Our industry faces considerable challenges, including labor shortage and insufficient financial protection, which have been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Carbon pricing intends to reduce emissions, but in practice, it also creates a competitive disadvantage between farmers across provincial jurisdictions and at the international stage. In our northern climate, farmers rely on heating and cooling using a range of fuel sources and across production types, including greenhouses, livestock farms, and machinery such as grain dryers. Quickly transitioning away from carbon-based fuels isn't always an option, nor a simple choice on the farm. Vegetable greenhouse facilities, for example, are equipped with computerized climate-controlled systems to provide optimal growing conditions. Most growers rely on natural gas boilers for a consistent, cost-effective, sustainable, and on-site source of key combustion byproducts. Both heat and food-grade carbon dioxide are provided for the plants to breathe and grow. With advanced combined heat and power systems, even the electricity for supplemental lighting is generated. Farmers have a long-standing history of innovating and improving efficiencies. To further incentivize reductions to greenhouse gas emissions, the move to a low-carbon economy needs to recognize the environmental co-benefits farmers provide and support them with legislation that addresses the full range of primary agricultural production that is not currently in a position to transition away from fossil fuel consumption.
So, Mr. Santi, okay, go ahead, finish. Sorry.
Throughout the pandemic, Canada's agricultural sector has stepped up and continued to provide secure and healthy food sources to Canadian families. We thank you for the opportunity to speak today and look forward to your questions. Sorry if I went a little over.
It's all good. We're good. So thank you, Ms. Delasanti. And now from the National Farmers Union, Ms. Katie Ward, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Ward.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to present today. It's a welcome break from the lambing barn. My name is Katie Ward, and in addition to being a sheep and hog farmer in the National Capital Region, I'm in my third term as president of the National Farmers Union. The NFU is Canada's only national direct membership general farm organization, representing thousands of farmers from coast to coast, engaged in all commodities across a wide range of scales, everything from market gardens to large-scale export grain operations, and utilizing a variety of practical approaches from organic and biodynamic through to regenerative and conventional. No farm organization has thought longer and deeper about climate change and reducing agricultural emissions. The NFU has been advocating for climate change mitigation and adaptation policies for over 2 decades. Climate change and emissions reduction was the theme of our 2003 National Convention, but our policy and educational work on the connections between agriculture and the climate crisis goes as far back as 1997. In 2019, the NFU published a discussion paper entitled Tackling the Farm Crisis and the Climate Crisis, which lays out a roadmap for a 30% reduction in agricultural emissions alongside policies to increase net farm incomes. The NFU has called for a transformation of Canadian agriculture, a future with lower emissions, more farmers, higher net incomes, lower debt, more use of renewable energy, more young farmers, and production systems based on agroecology, food sovereignty, and protecting and regenerating soils, water, and biodiversity. The NFU was the only farm organization that intervened in support of the federal government in the Supreme Court challenge to the carbon levy. I bring this up to clarify that while we do not advocate a carbon levy on farmers and the fuels we use on our farms and ranches, we do strongly support the constitutional right of the federal government to implement strong and effective national measures to rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2018, we became one of the founding members of a coalition called Farmers for Climate Solutions, which advocates for agricultural practices and policies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture as the most effective way for farmers to avoid paying a price for emissions. In 2019, delegates at our 50th annual convention passed a policy resolution supporting a rebate on dryer fuels and other agricultural uses of propane and natural gas, such as barn heat, because we believe that farmers face enough of a challenge to our bottom line already, and the erratic weather patterns caused by climate change, which disrupt our harvest as catastrophically as happened in 2019, should not mean that farmers face financial penalty on top of the weather risks that impact our very livelihood. I would like to thank the government for the rebate announced in last Monday's budget for the backstop provinces where the federal pricing is in effect. A simple rebate mechanism would be for farmers to document eligible or non-household use of natural gas and propane and attendant carbon levies paid and request a refund, perhaps as part of a tax or GST filing. In light of the budget announcement, it may be that Bill 206 is no longer needed, especially since we understand that the budget rebate mechanism may cover barn heating in addition to grain drying fuel usage, and it would therefore be more expansive than the bill under consideration here today. I want to note, however, that we are here today to talk about removing a measure, admittedly flawed, that could reduce on-farm emissions. And while it is necessary to ensure that farmers are not financially penalized while low emissions technology catches up to the extreme weather challenges we're already facing as we grow food here in Canada, it is more necessary to introduce a suite of measures to partner with farmers, support farmers, and incentivize farmers to reduce emissions so that agriculture is not increasingly seen as a high emission sector while other parts of our economy are reducing their emissions on the way to our Paris targets. Last Monday's budget introduced a number of very positive programs and spending measures that the NFU and Farmers for Climate Solutions have called for, and we're grateful to see financial support for farmers and ranches to actually implement practices that will reduce farm-related GHG emissions. Assistance to transition to low-emission technology and practices on our farms means that we don't have to face the financial risk of such a transition on our own, and helps to level the playing field when we're in competition internationally from farmers receiving far more agri-environmental support, such as in the EU and the US. Given market demand and potential border pricing measures under discussion internationally, everyone knows that we must go further. So we need additional programs to support farmers. I'd like to highlight for you today the need for what we are suggesting could be called a Canadian Farm Resilience Agency, or CFRA, modeled upon the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration, which the federal government administered across the Prairie provinces for 70 years.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, and we'll have to start the question round. So with the question round, we'll start with Ms. Rood for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Rood.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. So my question is for the Canadian Horticulture Council first to begin with. I understand that many producers, and you've kind of touched on this, we rely heavily on gas and propane, and greenhouses are exempt, but coming from the produce industry, from a potato background, I know that we have a lot of heating costs in the winter to heat produce that's stored in the storage over the course of the winter so that it doesn't freeze. And right now it includes the carbon tax. So just curious if you have any kind of idea what the typical annual cost to horticulture producers would be for a carbon tax on propane or natural gas for that, just even an average number. You'll have to unmute if you're trying to speak.
Sorry, I see that. Are you asking just for potato barns, or did you want
no,
to
in
know?
general, for anybody? That was just one example because for produce barns to store the root vegetables over the course of the winter.
Sorry, I can't answer that. I know a lot about greenhouses, but not much more. Aaron, are you able to answer that? I don't see him anymore.
I think he's disappeared.
Oh dear. Well, that's unfortunate, but we can get back to you with that answer. I could tell you what.
That would be great. I'll just move on to my next question if that's okay.
Yeah.
I only get 6 minutes, so I got to keep this tight here. So, and you probably can't comment on this question either, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's outside of the scope of this bill when we're talking about paying carbon tax on fuel used to transport goods from greenhouses, from farms to the point of sale. And I'm not sure if you have any estimate of the typical annual carbon tax that we paid by producers just in transportation costs to get their goods from one warehouse to their packing facility or from the packing facility off to where they need to ship it to.
I'm sorry, I can't answer that either because I know about greenhouse and I know the carbon plan in BC, which does not include transportation of goods. And I would have deferred to Aaron, who looks like he's come back, but he might not be quite. He's not quite there.
Do you have any idea then how much of a factor the carbon tax is in rising prices to the produce industry, whether it's greenhouses or across the board as part, speaking on behalf of the Horticulture Council?
Aaron, have you heard that question or can
No,
you answer it?
Our internet at our office just went down, so my sincerest apologies.
That's okay. I'll just move on because we're running out of time here. I'd like to direct just a question over to Ms. Ward, if I could, for a moment. And I know we've had the pleasure of having a conversation before and appreciated that conversation. And you did touch on some of the points when we're talking about reducing agriculture emissions in Canada and trying to reduce that. But we know that agriculture and farmers have done a lot of things already on their own over the last decade even to reduce emissions. And you mentioned to me before that you're a member of a larger organization that is part of a group of about 200,000 members or so, 182 organizations in 81 countries. So I'm just wondering if you can comment, because we're focused on Canada, but are you not just Canada? I mean, we only have 2% of the world's emissions. So what are you doing as part of those organizations to maybe help agriculture in other countries to reduce their emissions specifically?
Thank you very much for the question, Ms. Rood. So the organization you're referencing is called La Via Campesina. It is an international organization of peasant and small-scale farmers and fisher folks across the country, across the world. Many of the organizations are in their home countries engaged in food sovereignty issues and work against deforestation, which is, of course, a prime driver of emissions in a lot of developing countries. In a lot of cases where some of these smaller organizations are engaged, the emissions issues are less from agriculture in a lot of those countries than they are from energy production. And so it doesn't tend to be a primary focus of those organizations. Some of our sister organizations in the EU, though, for example, are actively engaged in emissions reductions practices and education, just as we are here.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I'm not sure how much time I have left. Do you?
50 seconds.
I'm going to just defer my last question over to Mr. Lawrence, if that's okay, my last 50 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Rood, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be for Ms. Ward, and thank you for your actions in fighting climate change. And my question would go something like this. And although I too was pleased to see that the government at least acknowledged that this is an issue for farmers, it may in fact take them years, especially minority parliament might be 3 or 4 years. Could you not see putting this solution in place, Bill C-206, to help farmers in the interim, as some are paying thousands and thousands of dollars, even if you do believe in the government's solution?
So
very quickly, Evans.
Okay. Our policy in our organization favors a rebate. However, we do feel that farmers who are facing no other options in the face of difficult harvests should not bear this burden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And now, Mr. Blois for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Blois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses again for their testimony here today. I'll start with the Canadian Horticulture Council. Of course, in my riding of Kings Hants, horticulture is one of the commodity groups that is very prominent. And I guess my question is, has the price on pollution encouraged producers to, or incentivized them to change some behavior? And I'll tell you just quickly the story that I have. I've visited a number of farms in my riding who have looked at, for example, as it relates to greenhouses, improving the actual infrastructure of the greenhouses such that they actually spend less on, let's say, things like propane or diesel heating. Are those examples where at least this conversation on price on pollution has encouraged some adoption of change for your producers?
I'd like to take this one because we're in the area I know, greenhouses. A lot of the things you're mentioning or envisioning, like screens, double screens to keep the heat in, using glass that it's more has more insulative properties, etc., have already been adopted by most of the large commercial greenhouses at least in British Columbia and Ontario. And those things have been adopted already, and it's not necessarily driven by the price on carbon as the price to do business. And it made good sense for sustainability and for emissions, and also for your bank deposits for the actual company.
Well, no, absolutely. And that's, in my own writing, that's exactly what I was hearing from the producers, because of course we don't have a federal backstop, but indeed we do have a price on pollution. It's exhibited through sometimes electricity costs. And I've seen some of my producers making these investments that not only help reduce emissions, but indeed are good for the bottom line. Maybe I'll ask this question to Mr. Korstein. If not the price on pollution, I understand that it creates some challenges. What broadly speaking, in about 35, 40 seconds, what is CHC's plan? What do they think is best to be part of some of the climate solution to be able to get to some of these targets that we're shooting for? You're on mute, sorry.
I think the response and call to action is both dynamic and integrative. I think a primary focus could be on alternate energy sources to minimize our carbon footprint, maximize our efficiency, our affordability, which could in turn increase our bottom line and lower our cost of production. Going clean fuel, as well as improving our ability to sequester and reuse carbon, I think could have significant impacts in the growing industry moving forward, as well as addressing the costs from an energy and economic standpoint for industries such as grain.
Okay, so some of the things you mentioned indeed will have an intrinsic cost, though, even on clean fuel standards, that potentially has some additional costs. Where is CHC in relation to, let's say, for the United States? Because there is going to be a dramatic change. We've seen it already in terms of the administration, the Biden administration, certainly working and seeing agriculture as a mechanism, not only to support economic growth, but be part of climate solutions as well. In terms of alignment, do you have any position broadly on where the U.S. is going? Because I know you talk about international equivalency, and that's important for your export market. Any broad strokes comments on where you see the United States going, and whether or not we can align policy in that regard?
I think it's just important for us to set our strategic goals and objectives to, if not mirror, at least align with the targets that the United States is looking to implement and achieve. And although, we would like to have similar accomplishments and achievements at the end of it, our targets may differ. So as CHC is concerned in terms of climate, it's important to see how they are looking to implement the changes that they are discussing, and then how best we can execute that across our agricultural industry.
I'll go to Ms. Ward. Thank you again. Others have mentioned it for your advocacy through the, I think, Farmers Climate Solutions that you mentioned. You talked about a rebate. Do you see that? Can you clarify for me? Do you see that as a rebate, i.e., exactly what a farmer would necessarily pay into the price on pollution? They get all of that back, or is it collected similar to the way that the price on pollution works writ large in society, and then back on a per capita basis to the farmers, such that there is still an incentive to change behavior? Because I understand intrinsically the idea that it gets captured in all of society. Larger emitters or larger producers like the agriculture sector can get disadvantaged in that. Do you see a rebate per capita, or just exactly back to the farm?
We would like to see the mechanism set up so that farmers are not bearing this burden on their own. Farming causes, depending on whose estimates you're using, anywhere between sort of 8 to 12% of Canada's GHG emissions. And yet we are pretty unique in being a price taker. So there's only so much that we can absorb in terms of costs on our farms without impacting our already really thin net income and our margins. So we would really like to see that rebated in terms of costs that farmers are paying, but absolutely acknowledge that we need to have incentives just like every other industry to reduce our emissions. It's going to help solve the problem.
I've got 30 seconds, so I want to get one final one in. You mentioned some of the incentives in the fall economic statement in the budget. It's nearly $1 billion of these incentives. Mm-hmm. I would share that same view with you, that these types of mechanisms to partner with industry are going to be important to help us get to where we need to get to. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say, especially the amount that was allocated towards incentivizing purchase of cleaner burning fuels, cleaner burning grain drying equipment, I think is going to be a huge impact for folks on the prairies.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Thank you, Mr. Blois. Et maintenant, Monsieur Perron, pour 6 minutes. Allez-y, Monsieur Perron.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I hope that you can hear me well. So I will start with Ms. Ward. Let's continue. So in your presentation, you mentioned your support for the carbon tax, but you would want a rebate for fuel. However, you said that Bill C-206 would not necessarily be necessary in light of the new budget. But as an organization, would you like us to adopt Bill C-206? I just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Our concern is that our understanding of Bill C-206 as it stands right now does not necessarily accommodate for barn heating the way that the budget rebate is intended to cover, and the recategorization of heating fuels in particular. And so we're envisioning that there would be a fair amount of work to do in terms of amendments to make Bill 206 as beneficial for farmers as the mechanisms that were designed or were explained in the budget as we understand them right now.
Okay, je comprends. Donc, vous...
So you would like the inclusion of heating fuel? But if we adopt Bill 206, would that already accomplish something? Because it relates to grain drying.
Understood. The position of the NFU is that while carbon pricing is not necessarily the most effective mechanism, as we feel that incentivizing emissions reduction at the source would be more beneficial. At the same time, an exemption without programs put in place to put those incentives in for the transition and the emissions reduction is not going to result in the emissions reductions that we need, because we're already facing the results of the extreme weather that climate change is causing on our farms. And I think honestly, reducing emissions before they happen is going to save the government more money in the long run and save farmers more money in the long run when we're not facing disaster relief claims on our farms.
OK. Merci beaucoup pour votre réponse.
Thank you for your answer. As for heating, are there existing alternatives? That's my question, because for grain drying, we've noticed that there are few alternatives. Are there any possible solutions that could be adopted rapidly if there was a financial support program to adhere to these new technologies?
In terms of greenhouse heating, I might defer to my colleagues on the Horticultural Council for that in particular. I know that there's increasing commercialization and research being done on biomass fuels and some ideas in that vein, and there is increasing commercialization happening. I believe there's a company out in Manitoba that is bringing a product to market, but I would have to get back to you with more details.
OK. Monsieur Coristine, si vous voulez compléter, peut-être, on vous a...
Mr. Coristine, would you like to add something? Are you still there?
In terms of heating, it was briefly touched upon. You know, there's a lot of research and development going into bio-based fuels being more circular of an operation, utilizing in the greenhouse industry or maybe even grain, burning some of that organic material to provide the fuel. Pyrolysis is another avenue that's being actively researched, and we're putting investments in, hopeful of the upfront costs that we are, willing to not only pay and go with our initiative to identify and develop avenues that will have a net reduction in our carbon footprint, even though it is an exorbitant upfront cost. We remain, I guess, steadfast in our mission and commitment to identify these avenues to, whether it's heating or lighting, to minimize our impact and optimize our operations.
Et qu'est-ce que vous pensez, vous, de ces 206?
What do you think about C206? Do you find some aspects of it incomplete? Do you think it's a good first step that would help you?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a great start. I think there's clearly been a lot of hard work and insight that's being put into it. Ideally, there'd be a 100% exemption. And as well, this would be extended to heating and cooling of all sorts of farming practice. But as it stands, 80% is a good start. But margins are thin in certain sectors of agriculture, and by keeping it at 20%, it's an absolute value. So as our carbon pricing increases, our bottom line decreases. So we need to be very aware of that.
Merci, Monsieur Perron. Thank you, Mr. Coristine. And now we'll go to Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for contributing to our discussion on Bill C-206 today. I'll start with the Canadian Horticultural Council. Mr. Coristine, you had mentioned a few things. You were going over the existing greenhouse pollution pricing act, and you did correctly mention that the existing definition section, eligible farming activity, goes through a few definitions there. But then when it comes down to eligible farming machinery, it specifically excludes property that is used for the purpose of providing heating or cooling to a building or similar structure. Now, we've already been informed that C-206 is pretty narrow, and it may be beyond our ability to expand it. So if C206 as it's currently written is not going to apply to greenhouses, like I'm worried that we're kind of using this as a proxy for a larger conversation about the carbon tax, but I really want to focus on C206. If C206 passes, can you tell the committee, like, as it's currently written, just changing the qualifying farming fuel definition, are there any tangible benefits that will apply to your industry as C206 is written?
I think it will incentivize year-round growing. I think it will really maximize our ability to continue to build the sector and provide year-round access to food as the cost to produce it, it would decrease, and again, the taxes that would be paid as carbon increases would be extremely beneficial to the sector.
And then a follow-up question. You'd also mentioned budget 2021, and on page 174, it did mention Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. For farmers that use natural gas and propane in their operations, it's estimated that in those 4 provinces, farmers would receive approximately $100 million in the first year. Do you have an analysis of what your industry might achieve as a rebate from that measure?
No, that's some questions we've been trying to follow up on, knowing exactly what are the mechanisms of that program, how will the rebates be administered, how will it be divided amongst the greenhouse sector. So we are seeking, I guess, clarity for ourselves in how that $100 million will be reallocated. But I do know that with the funds that are received, they will be put into investment and research to continue our efforts to become less carbon and fossil fuel dependent.
For sure. Thank you for that clarification. Ms. Ward, thank you for being here on behalf of the National Farmers Union. Always great to hear your point of view and the efforts that are being made in the agricultural community to really be one of our greatest tools against climate change. I note that the NFU supports, broadly speaking, a rebate on the costs of drying fuels. The NFU has done a lot of research on the farm crisis, like just the amount of debt load that farmers are carrying these days. And can you just briefly tell us, what is the result? Like, what has that debt resulted from? You've mentioned sort of the high cost of inputs that are really commonplace among modern farming operations these days.
Well, and a lot of that debt comes from 2 sources, really, primarily inputs. If you refer back to, I had mentioned our 2019 report tackling the climate crisis and the farm crisis. There's a really illustrative graph in there showing where the difference is in between farm net income and farm revenues, and it's really primarily coming out of farm input costs. So that generally tends to come out to approximately 95% of the dollar, every food dollar. So we're taking home about 5 or 6 cents out of every food dollar spent on average as farmers. The other big driver in prices is land. The price of farmland is growing leaps and bounds and has gone up massively in the last 10 years especially. But if we can find ways to incentivize farmers to reduce our input costs, maintain yields to the point that we can continue feeding our communities and driving our export of agriculture, but reduce especially our nitrogen fertilizer usage, even by small percentages, it's going to have a big impact because synthetic nitrogen fertilizers especially produce the 3 main greenhouse gases at both creation and use and runoff and off-gassing throughout the system. So that's a big one. And if we can incentivize things like cover cropping and other practices that are going to reduce needs for those inputs, we're going to both do better for farmers' bottom lines and do a lot better for the environment, and we can continue doing our part to help, solve this climate crisis.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Thank you, Ms. Ward. And now we'll start the second round of 5 minutes, and we'll start with Mr. Epp for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being with us here today. I'll start with the greenhouse industry with Mr. Corsten. If you're reaching us from the OGVG offices, you're a kilometer from my house, and I believe we share an internet provider. So please check on my place on your way home, because I'm in Ottawa this week.
Will do.
Okay. I'm obviously from the area. I understand the industry fairly well. Can you give a sense of the scale for the rest of the people on our screens here today? You've got an 80% exemption right now, the greenhouse sector does on the farm heating fuels. Just put into perspective the 20% that the greenhouse industry is still paying the carbon tax on. Can you put some dollar amounts around, or because I'm familiar with the scale, but many people might not be?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It depends, I guess, how actively we're trying to go to an annual production cycle now. So there's some variability, but hundreds of millions of dollars provincially that it's being paid in these carbon taxes. And so, I can't even fathom how much money that is. So just, I know from reading a piece of paper that is what they cost just in paying for their carbon consumption alone to operate. Doesn't take into consideration labor, machinery, equipment. So I feel, with this exemption, especially as the carbon price increases, just think of the net overall impact that's going to have. Because again, as we mentioned, it's an absolute value. So if it goes out to, $1.70 or however it goes, that it's just that much more, and how narrower the margins get. So
I'll direct the next question actually to both representatives of the greenhouse industry, kind of from Ontario and from BC. Who do you compete with? Because I think you compete slightly different into different markets. And what are your competitors paying for carbon pricing?
Thank you for the question. Are you wondering who we in BC compete with?
Correct. Where would your main competition extra from outside of Canada come from? And what is their carbon pricing regime? And I'll ask the same back to Aaron as well.
The greenhouse sector is quite integrated in the United States and Canada. Most of the greenhouses in the United States are owned and operated by Canadian producers. And so that would make, and they've built that way in order to have annual production easily from all of their different operations. So our biggest competitor would be from Mexico or from the Netherlands in different crops. The Netherlands mainly in peppers, but in Mexico it's from all crops.
Aaron?
Yes, similar to that, as Linda mentioned, we compete heavily with Mexico. So if you're to look at StatsCan or, for us, OMAFRA's index, you'll see who our largest export and import counterparts are. And it is predominantly the US and Mexico. So we need to make sure that how we operate and the decisions we make for specifically the greenhouse industry really has a even broader economic impact in terms of being able to remain competitive in the export market.
I'm very familiar actually with the innovation that just seems to be inherent in this industry. I've watched that industry burn coal, burn diesel fuel, burn biomass, burn almost anything for heat as the markets depend. So we're talking about additional pressures on pricing on fossil-based fuels. What are the alternatives out there? What, is clean electrical generation even a possibility right now? I'm not as familiar. When you look ahead, what do you see?
So for our long-term,
oh,
sure.
No, as well. I'd like to speak as well. But one of the things that gets lost in this conversation is the fact that the greenhouse sector burns natural gas to produce CO2 mainly. So we need carbon dioxide during the day to feed the crop.
I'm going to interrupt. Talk about cogen and trigen. I was going to work that in my next question, but if both of you want to respond right away, go ahead.
Cogen or trigen is absolutely fabulous. It's not permitted in British Columbia because, it's permitted, but you can't sell the excess electricity to the grid. I know that Ontario has taken great advantage of that, and we do recognize the value in BC. But our biggest thing for greenhouse is that if we produce the CO2 on site rather than trucking it in, it's a more efficient use. There are alternative fuels, for example, biomass, and many of my greenhouse members have biomass boilers, but unfortunately you can't get CO2 off of it economically. So, and there's been a lot of research done on it already. So they tend to lean towards the natural gas so that they can get the CO2 they need.
Aaron?
Thank you. Sorry, we're out of time, Mr. Rep. And we'll move on to Mr. Lewis for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses for your testimony. This is very enlightening and very helpful. So I hope I have time to talk to everybody. Wouldn't mind starting with Ms. Ward from the National Farmers Union. You know, we've talking here about easing climate crisis by lowering the input uses and emissions, and how we can make that go a long way to boosting farm income, because we know about the low margins, and farmers have that potential to remain productive and profitable at the same time, even while they're reducing the use of purchased inputs. So, but as we discussed today, we know that they can't do it alone, and as the government, we need to partner and support, and in your words, incentivize farmers. And that's why I'm proud. One of the reasons our budget is allocating $10 million to help transition to clean energy from diesel farm fuel equipment, and what we're talking about today, and that plan that we also mentioned to return $100 million in funds through carbon pricing directly to the farmers. But the partnership is so the farmers don't have to face that transition to lower emissions alone, and you mentioned that, and I do appreciate reading your report tackling the climate crisis, because one of the recommendations you had, the recommended policies, was data collection. And so I wondered if you can help us, because you referred to it as on-farm energy use data is scarce or missing, and more measurements of GHGs is needed to calibrate and verify the modeling. So in order to conduct these ongoing farm energy and emissions audits, what kind of solutions would you suggest that we can use, and so we can take that data and move forward and work together?
Well, there's some interesting work being done right now through the Living Labs program at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I know that the newest round of projects they're looking at is looking at soil health and conservation and soil carbon sequestration. But it could be a very good avenue for looking at data collection that way. I know that I want to say it was a Government of Saskatchewan program, potentially late 80s, early 90s, did a fair amount of data collection on on-farm energy usage. So in some cases that data is out there, but it's clearly needs some updating. I really do think though that we need the assistance of both research scientists and agrologists, independent of any sort of incentive to just tell us that our answer is going to be add more nitrogen or add more this, to help us do the right thing in a way that's going to help improve our net incomes on our farms.
I appreciate that. And the independent agrologist is another one of your recommendations, and that was great that you worked that in and mentioned that. And another one also you mentioned briefly was the Canadian Farm Resilience Agency, coordinating that research. So can you tell me what you would promote into how we can coordinate that research into to low emission approaches?
Absolutely. I think if we have independent agrologists, they can help farmers adopt their best possible low emissions cropping and grazing systems, create and run demonstration farms, potentially even using the existing research station and experimental farm network that we still have. And that's such a really a thing that all Canadians should be proud of, coordinating research into low emissions approaches, offering independent soil testing for nitrogen, carbon, water infiltration, and lots of other measures of soil health and fertility, and also help preserve and restore wetlands and trees. The old Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Administration that was created back in the 30s, one of the last aspects of the PFRA that was in existence was the tree farms out in the prairies that helped with reforestation issues and the biodiversity that helps to promote. If we can promote good soil health, we can retain more carbon and have less drought and water issues on our prairie soils in particular, which is where a lot of our ag emissions come from with the cropping systems that are in use in the prairies.
Great, thank you, Ms. Ward. I've about a minute left. I wanted to address the Canadian Horticultural Council, perhaps Mr. Korstein, because he's closest to me. We talked about alternative and renewable fuel fuel options while we're supporting farmers to make this transition. And I wanted to speak about anaerobic digesters. I know down in Niagara region, there's Bayview Flowers. They're using biodigesters, anaerobic biodigesters to produce heat and electricity is sold to the grid, which is enough in their case to enough electricity for about 200 homes in a year. So can you tell me about the potential and the potential for anaerobic digesters?
Sure. Quickly.
Yep, I know in the sector, it's more research could be done specifically for the greenhouse area. I do think it probably has some feasible opportunities for us to utilize and implement it, and put it towards a co-op type electricity grid where we're using that to fuel and charge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corstein. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And now, Monsieur Perron pour 2 minutes et demie.
Now, Mr. Perron for 2.5 minutes. Is it my turn? Yes. So, I would like to come back. Maybe Mr. Corstein, how would you feel about including a time limit to inside governments to develop programs or other incentives for the limits that will be fixed?
J'ai aucune idée, il n'y a rien de fait.
For instance, over 5 years, would it be something that would be logical, that would make sense or not?
I think it depends the context. Are we limiting carbon emissions to zero? Are we looking to reach Paris targets? Certainly the sooner the better, because if we can work with government to implement all our initiatives and at least show our due diligence and that we are actively pursuing, going as green as possible, then we won't get to 2030 where it's $170 per ton. So the sooner, the more money we'll save in terms of what we're going to pay. But we would need support from the government in terms of grant money, subsidies, upfront costs to be able to make that feasible.
Okay, merci.
Thank you. Mrs. Ward, you said earlier, would producers not prefer having an exemption instead of depending on checks from the government? What would you think? And I would also like to know what Mr. Corstein is thinking about that.
It's an interesting conundrum that farmers find ourselves in. We have a financial, bottom line running our businesses that, we have to balance our upfront costs versus what we can sell our products for and manage a net income that's going to at least keep us in business. That being said, as farmers, we also know that, especially for, say, grain farmers out in the prairies, there's 9 crop seasons left to get us to our Paris targets. And so we have to reduce emissions. Every industry does, but agriculture does as well. We have to do our parts. We're part of this community. And we are in a really unique position as an industry in that the changes that are being caused by the climate crisis are already impacting us on our farms.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Merci, Monsieur Perron. Now, Mr. McGregor for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Ward, in my 2.5 minutes, I'm going to ask you 2 questions and then give you the remainder of the time to answer. So first of all, in the existing act, we've already got gasoline and diesel fuel that are exempt. They are qualifying farming fuels. So do you have any thoughts on those 2 fuels? Because of course they are used quite a bit in farming activities, and it seems to me that C206 is just sort of following that precedent and then allowing natural gas and propane. And second of all, if you can also, I think it's important, like we keep on talking about the costs of the carbon tax, but and I think you just briefly answered this, But can you also just illustrate what the costs are if we don't address climate change? Because I have heard at this committee in the 3 years that I've been sitting at it, that farmers are on the front lines of climate change. And just give us a sense of what the economic costs of doing nothing in tackling climate change are going to be for farmers. Thank you.
So I'll touch on your first question briefly in terms of the impact of gas and diesel usage on our farms and ranches. You know, it's our primary usage for our equipment, for our combines, our tractors. A lot of the other equipment that we use on our farms are farm trucks. But there are interesting alternatives coming out. We have been holding an NF University webinar series over the course of this winter, and our most recent webinar was on electrification of farm equipment. So there's some really interesting possibilities coming up. Even you know, aftermarket upgrades you can do to your diesel equipment that's going to allow you to use biodiesel without a whole bunch of you know, knock-on problems and challenges that come with it. But I think the real thing that we need to address, because innovation is going to catch up with us, farmers are early adopters, and we just need the incentives to jump on board with that. You know, the EU is outspending us in terms of agri-environmental payments to farmers by multiple factors of 10. Which really does disadvantage our Canadian farms. The cost, if we don't address the climate crisis, it's kind of incalculable. If you talk to, you know, crop scientists about, it's not just extra carbon or longer growing seasons are going to mean we can grow more food. It's going to mean heat waves that are going to impinge on the growth capacity of our plants, droughts that are going to severely impact the rate of gain of our animals out on pasture, let alone the hailstorms, the windstorms, the tornadoes, all the other extreme weather. And I talk to young farmers who are just getting into farming right now, and they've never known a you know, simple, calm growing season the way that, like, I'm one of the last.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And just before I thank the panel, I just want to switch my hat to a small commercial greenhouse grower. And in my years of growing, you know, 30 years ago, we installed a biomass burning system. We've installed curtains to keep energy. We've removed our motorized fans to replace them with natural ventilation, because in greenhouse, that's your main cost. And it was done, if there had been rebates instead of incentive to help me move towards that, I don't know if I ever would have done it if it kept the price. So I did it because it was money back in my pocket directly. And I think that's how it needs to move forward for us to have the incentive to think ahead of, you know, what's new in energy conservation. That's my 2 cents as a greenhouse grower. And I'll put back my hat as the chair. And I will thank the panel for being with us today, from the Canadian Hort Council, Mr. Aaron Corstein, and Linda Deli Santi. Thanks so much for being here. And of course, Ms. Katie Ward from the National Farmers Union. Thanks so much for being here. Great. So we'll break for please go get your coffee or whatever and come back ASAP, because we want to try and get a few minutes for business. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Suspend. From the Canadian Canola Growers Association, Mr. Mike Amater, President. Welcome, Mr. Amater. And also Dave Carey, Vice President, Relations, Government Relations and Industry. And also from Dowler Carn Limited, Dan Kelly, Dirigeant Principal de Finance, the Financial Manager.
Chief Financial Officer.
And we'll start with a 5-minute opening statement. We'll go with the Canadian Canola Growers Association. So you have 5 minutes. You can split it or whichever way you want to deliver it. So go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes, you're good.
All right. All right. Mr. Chair. Thank you. My name is Mike Amater. I'm the chair of the Canadian Canola Growers Association. I farm at Sylvan Lake, Alberta, which is an hour and a half north of Calgary. I grow canola, pulses, wheat, and barley on 1,400 acres. Today, with me is Dave Carey, CCGA's VP of Government and Industry Relations. CCGA is the national organization representing Canada's 43,000 canola farmers. Canola is Canada's most widely seeded crop, generating the largest farm cash receipts of any agricultural commodity, earning Canadian farmers over $10.2 billion in 2020. Canola farmers export over 90% of our crop. The industry we support contributes 207,000 jobs and $29.9 billion to Canada's economy every year. Canola farmers are committed to a sustainable future and have established goals to support that commitment. By 2025, they will reduce their fuel usage by 18% per bushel, increase land use efficiency by 40% per bushel, sequester an additional 5 million tons of CO2, use 4R nutrient stewardship practices on 90% of canola production acres, and continue to safeguard the more than 2,000 beneficial insects that call canola fields and surrounding habitat home. CCGA is pleased to support Bill C-206. While we are pleased to see the budget include a commitment to return part of the funds collected from the price on carbon to farmers, we view this bill as a more direct and efficient way to provide farmers with an exemption for propane and natural gas used on farm for grain drying and irrigation. For my farm, grain drying is important because it allows me to get my crop off the field when time is short at the end of the harvest season and weather turns to rain and snow. Sometimes I cannot wait for my crop to dry in the field. When a crop sits in the field with excess moisture, it loses quality and volume, which in turn means I will have to sell it as a discount. If wet grain is put into storage, it can spoil in a matter of days. In the last 15 years, my farm has experienced increased weather variability not seen since the 1960s. It has become more and more difficult to harvest my crops due to rain and snow, even at the end of the growing season. This means I have to run my natural gas grain dryer more often than not. That dryer is a piece of farming equipment which is central to my operation now. Since I purchased it, I have invested approximately $20,000 upgrading it to make it as energy efficient as possible. And if there is a way for me to make my dryer more efficient yet, I would do so. But there isn't currently anything on the market that can help me reduce my drying costs. I understand the government's objective with the price on carbon is to change behavior and to transition operations to an alternative fuel source. However, farmers do not have viable alternatives available to us. Global competitiveness is critical to our industry. Canadian canola farmers are price takers on a global market with no ability to pass additional costs on. These additional costs will impact our ability to remain competitive and threaten the viability of our farming operations. I appreciate the government's recent budget announcement that they will provide $50 million in funding for projects like retrofitting grain dryers. While these types of programs may be useful to farmers who have not already retrofitted their dryer, as I have done, this will not address the fact that our energy infrastructure in Western Canada is carbon-based. If there was a way to transition from carbon-based inputs, our industry would do so. Fuel is one of my largest input costs. To keep pace with international competitors, farmers are constantly looking to become more fuel and energy efficient. But in order to achieve the BTUs necessary to properly dry my grain, I require carbon-based energy. There's been concern that Bill 206 may not accomplish what it is intended to do. To ensure it does, we recommend that fuel used in grain drying and irrigation be properly accounted for in the bill as exempt from the price on carbon. CCGA remains optimistic about the future of Canada's canola farmers and their ability to continue to contribute positively to both the healthy environment and a healthy economy. Canadian agriculture should be viewed as a strategic partner in this dialogue. Canadian canola farmers are committed to building on our environmental successes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Animator. Right on time. So we'll go to our next presenter, Mr. Kelly from Dowler Carn. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yes, you're all good.
Thank you. I would first like to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Ojibwa, Chippewa peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. I'm here today as the Chief Financial Officer of Dowler Carn Limited, a third-generation family-owned company founded in 1943. We are distributors of gasoline, diesel, and propane, serving our customers in southwestern Ontario for almost 80 years with our head office in St. Thomas, Ontario. In particular, a significant portion of our customers are farmers, from small family farms to large operations, farming cash crops, livestock, or a combination of both. I am also the past chair of the Canadian Propane Association. The CPA represents the entire supply chain for propane: extraction, refining, distribution, marketing, and delivery to end users across Canada. We represent over 400 member companies that participate in the propane industry, from large refiners to independent distributors who serve Canadian consumers. Propane is a low carbon intensive fuel, generates up to 26% fewer GHGs than gasoline and 98% less particulate matter than diesel fuel. Propane is an abundant 100% Canadian fuel that has been energizing Canadians across the country for decades. It is a clean, affordable, and readily available, and can provide solutions today in the discussions for Canada's clean energy future. In the spring of 2019, Dowler Carn registered as a distributor under the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act and has charged, collected, and remitted the federal fuel charge since its inception on April 1st, 2019. In that time, we have collected and remitted $19.8 million in respect of the federal fuel charge. In particular, we have collected and remitted approximately $1.7 million in federal fuel charge in respect of propane that's been used in farming. These amounts come directly from the bottom line of farmers. The original regulations in the Act recognize the uniqueness of the agriculture sector and provided relief from the federal fuel charge for farm fuels, specifically exempting gasoline and diesel fuel that is directly used in farming. Although gasoline and diesel fuel are necessary for planting and harvesting crops, propane is just as vital to a farming operation. However, propane has not been granted the same relief as high carbon fuels like gasoline and diesel. The most recent budget, the Minister of Finance announced some relief for farmers who are incurring the cost of the federal fuel charge for propane and natural gas. Although we applaud the government for recognizing the oversight, we have concerns with the proposal for a targeted rebate program. Rather than providing a rebate to address the issue, we believe that propane should be afforded the same treatment as gasoline and diesel. Simply extending the exemption of propane would provide the following: provide an equitable treatment for a low carbon intensive fuel as afforded to those that are much more carbon intensive, and provide relief for all propane uses in farming operations, not just for drying crops, and also remove the need for bureaucracy in managing the rebate program. Currently, we charge the federal fuel charge at the time of invoice, then remit same to CRA at the end of the following month. We are reimbursed when the farmer pays his invoice, including the federal fuel charge. Should propane be exempt from the FFC, as is the case of gasoline and diesel, there would simply be no charge on the invoice. The farmer would issue a Form L402 exemption to Dowler Carn, which we would keep on file. Should a rebate program be instituted, we would need to invoice the farmer charging the FFC, which they would pay to us and we would remit. At some point in the future, the farmer would then be required to submit a rebate application, which would need to be reviewed, approved, and processed by CRA, who would then issue payment to the farmer for the same FFC they paid at the time of purchase. The rebate would then be subject to audit. This much bureaucracy doesn't seem necessary when an exemption would meet the same goal. Another issue facing farmers centers around the focus on propane for grain drying purposes only. Propane use in farming extends beyond simply grain drying, as livestock and dairy farmers use propane to keep their livestock warm in the winter. In fact, Dollar Carn sells as much propane to heat barns for livestock as we sell for grain drying. Some regions of Canada may have greater needs for propane to dry crops, but the need for heating barns is just as critical. Imagine the impact on a poultry operation with hundreds of chickens if they couldn't keep the barn warm in the dead of winter. In addition to barn heat, propane is also used for backup power generation, protecting farm operations against power outages. We at Dollar Carn and the CPA support the approach prescribed in Bill C-206 and believe it is the most efficient, cost-effective, and reasonable approach. We applaud the government for recognizing the need to correct the regulation, but believe an exemption for a much cleaner, cheaper fuel is the more equitable approach. I'd now be happy to take any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and we'll move to questions. And to start our second round, let me just get back. Mr. Steinley for no, sorry.
Mr. Lawrence first.
Mr. Lawrence, yeah, I had my Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence, for 6 minutes.
No problem. I've never been called such a wonderful gentleman in my life, so I appreciate the compliment. I'll start with you, Mr. Kelly, and just want to give you an opportunity to expand upon what you were talking about. I think the movement to more efficiency and reduction of GHG not only involves the cessation of use of greenhouse fossil fuels, but also the choosing of cleaner fuels. So, for example, if for example China switched all their coal production to natural gas or propane, we would see a much greater reduction in GHG than we would ever see if Canada went to absolute net zero tomorrow. I was wondering if you could comment on that and maybe propane's role in actually reducing greenhouse gases.
You know, propane is a great solution. When I look at rural settings, mostly there's still 300,000 homes that are heating with furnace oil. Switching those homes to propane is going to have an immediate impact. You look at northern communities that are using diesel for power generation. You know, we were incurring costs for cleaning up spills on an annual basis. Propane could replace those at a cheaper price and with no impact on the environment. Propane has no impact on the environment. A release of propane simply dissipates into the atmosphere. It has no impact on land, air, or water. When you're looking at the exports, we export as much propane in Canada as we consume. We've got a great abundant resource here in this country that can be used across the world to help reduce GHGs. And China is a great example.
Thanks very much. I'll switch over to the canola. Mr. Amateur, I was just wondering if you could just expand upon the impact that the carbon tax has had on some of your members there, and some of the specific financial impact. If you know what the average bill might be, or even just some anecdotal evidence, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks for the question. In Alberta, so I think I mentioned I'm from Alberta, and so we have had a carbon tax. We had it for a few years, then we didn't have a carbon tax. We've been a bit back and forth. To nail down the actual cost, I actually did a little bit of digging into my own billing, and it was quite difficult to determine what I actually personally had paid. But the one thing I can tell you is the government's price for carbon and natural gas will cost Canadian agriculture approximately $18.5 billion by 2030. And these are numbers that we have, from our organization we've come up with. So, it's difficult on a specific farm to do, but as an aggregate, that's kind of a number that we're looking at.
And just to further upon your testimony as well, I think I could probably speak for most of your members. They want to fight climate change, as I know everyone listening today does. But there just currently is not a feasible alternative, is there? Or what alternatives are you aware of, specifically with respect to grain drying, not using fossil fuels?
Yeah, I I would have to say I'm not aware of any. As I said in my testimony, that I have done an upgrade on my dryer a number of years ago, and as far as I know, I am as I'm as current, if you will, or up to date with the latest technology on my dryer for efficiency, and there's just nothing else available. And yeah, I hope I farm long enough to see if we have something different. I don't know if we will come up with something different, but if we do, and if it works, if it's efficient, if it's cost effective, I'm sure we would adopt that.
And changes in your industry, like all industries, take time as well. You told us it was great that you've invested in a higher efficiency grain dryer. Are all farmers doing that, or is that transition taking time as well?
Well, it does take time. I mean, all these things cost money, and if money was no object, I'm sure every farm in the prairies that had a grain dryer would be up to the latest and greatest. But we have so many different demands on us, upgrading equipment here and there, new tractors, combines, whatever you have. There's such a demand, and so you have to prioritize. And it's like I would, maybe I'd like to upgrade my dryer this year, but I currently need something else that's far more urgent, and that's just an exercise all farms go through. You have to prioritize. But like I said, if money was no object, I'm sure we'd have the latest, greatest with all the bells and whistles all the time.
Yeah, so in some ways, actually taking money out of the farmer's pocket through the carbon tax is actually counterproductive, because it gives you less money to invest in capital improvements. Would that be correct?
Oh, yeah, completely fair to say. Yeah, we our money comes from the crops we grow and when we sell them. And if I have an extra cost, that's the Achilles heel, I guess, if you will, of the crop sector, of the agriculture like that. I am a price taker. I cannot add a surcharge on the bottom of my, I have sold a load of grain and I need another $100 to cover my cost. You don't do that. That just does not happen. So therefore, that comes out of my pocket. And as I said before, we're always doing this juggling act. So yeah, if I have less dollars, it might mean my upgrade is next year.
Perfect. And just to finally continue on your testimony there, it's clear that you'd rather have an exemption as opposed to a credit where the money goes back to Ottawa, where it goes to Ottawa and comes back to you. Is that clear as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's far simpler.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. And now we'll go to Monsieur Drouin pour 6 minutes. Allez-y.
Mr. Drouin, 6 minutes.
I will apologize, and I should know this because I see Dave here on this call, okay. And we normally we don't chat about canola farming. We normally chat about policies that impact canola farming. So just help me understand in terms of, I understand grain drying for corn and soya because that's what every farmer grows in my riding. But for canola, I mean, are you, when you're drying, obviously you're trying to take the humidity out, but is it a long process? Are you spending, I mean, when it's time to harvest, are you spending, I mean, days grain drying this, or just help me understand what how that works?
Yeah, actually it can be literally maybe days or weeks. Probably our worst harvest we had in recent memory was 2019, and some of you may have seen it had the tagline or the name of the harvest from hell, and we were just on a mad scramble. And as what you'll typically do, you try to keep ahead of the harvesting with the combines with the dryer, but sometimes you can't. So you end up putting your grain in your bins, getting combined, but it's not really in a condition for long-term storage. So then you'll and it's a mad scramble because you are trying to get this grain back out of the bin because you don't have much time. Pull it back out, off to the dryer, and back into the dry bin. And 2019, I was drying grain like typically harvest should wrap up in October. I was drying grain in November and December and January, and you go get a load here and a load there, run it through the dryer, and try to keep on top of that. And it's an awful lot of work and an awful lot of time.
Thanks. I appreciate the education there. And you mentioned a figure of $18 billion. Now, obviously, that would be if variables don't change. So if we continue adapting the technologies of today, that's the $18 billion cost in 2030. That would be the particular cost to your industry, right? Am I?
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I'll get, if Dave, if you'd like to jump in, he can flesh that out a little bit more for you.
Well, I always talk to Dave. It's okay. No, but he can jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the number would be based on 2018 usage rates and prices. So that is an analysis that we did internally. We are now in the kind of final stages of getting third-party analysis done by accounting firm MNP, which will be canola specific, using verified third-party methodology that'll look at everything. Because we're here talking about 206 specifically, but as soon as the price of carbon goes up, the price of freight goes up, the price of custom haul trucking goes up, the price of everything goes up. So all of that will be accounted for. So the 18 billion, it's not back a napkin. We stand by it, but we will have a robust report from MNP very soon that kind of articulates all of those.
Great, thanks. And I know we are talking about C206, but I Mr. Emmeter, would you welcome, partnerships with investments from the government to say, okay, let's look at the pain points where the carbon tax is costing you, and obviously what we're trying to do is not necessarily penalize you. We're just trying to change we're just trying to decarbonize the economy. And would you welcome some investments and partnerships in order to find some new technologies to try and decarbonize the ag sector?
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. If we can get some help, and that's always the critical issue, right? It's like, how do I pay for these things? I want to do something different. I want to do something better, and there's only so much. There's only so many dollars to go around, and and critical things like this. Like I said earlier, yeah, I'd love to see if I have a different energy source for drying grain, and it's cost effective, it does the job. Yeah, number one, you look into it, right? First thing you do is you look into it. But if it proves itself, I'm sure that that could be adopted. Farmers are very good at that. They see something that makes them a nickel. It's cost effective. Fits into their business, they'll do it very quickly.
And as chair, and I'm not sure, are you starting to have some conversations with our U.S. counterparts now that the President Biden has said that they are moving ahead and rejoining the Paris Agreement? Are you sort of discussing that with some folks down south to see what they're thinking and the model that they may adapt?
Personally, I haven't. I'd maybe turn to Dave again if he's can talk on that point.
Yeah, we always keep in close contact with the U.S. associations. When it comes to canola, we're a bit different because we control 60% of the world's global trade. So our biggest competitor when it comes to canola is Australia, which did repeal their carbon tax a number of years ago. But I think we're all looking to see what the U.S. administration does, and certainly a lot of interest around most of our engagements of late have been around biofuels and the clean fuel regulations, as this committee is well aware of, but keeping an eye on what's happening in the U.S. certainly.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'm about to run out of time in 4 seconds, so I'll say thank you to our witnesses.
We're cutting it pretty close. That's great. Thank you, Mr. Drouin. And now we'll go to Monsieur Perron. For 6 minutes. Allez-y, Monsieur.
Mr. Perron, you have 6 minutes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I have a general question to begin with. I understand that in your testimony, you both said that you don't want to depend on the government for a rebate, and you'd rather have an exemption that will make it possible for you to keep the money and innovate. So if there were a program that would support you with investment so that you could make the transition? Because that transition needs to happen. That I'm sure the industry would be happy to engage in that partnership. Is that correct?
Well, I think the quick answer would be I have to see what's available as an alternative. That is the challenge. And if there is no alternative, you know, a partnership, investment partnership, or however you want to term it, it's kind of a moot point, because I'm at the and like I said with my grain dryer, I've kind of reached peak efficiency from what I can find. So the number one challenge is different technology, and if it's out there, and there again, how quickly I can adopt it is the challenge. So that's the big question.
Je vous félicite.
I congratulate you on that, because not all producers have managed to get that far. But that's basically the thrust of my question. There are no options at the moment. If there was an alternative, for example, that could be found through R&D, then implementing it could be considered. I think you would then be pleasantly surprised, and you would be happy to engage in those partnerships. A witness talked about a gap in 2006. There's no time limit, and their concern was that GHG emissions need to be reduced, but there was no time limit on the exemption. If we committed the government, say, to supporting you for a transition over a set number of years, would that be helpful?
Well, certainly it would accelerate any transitions we have. But I'll go back to my previous point. It's like I need to see something that will do the job for me, and that's going to be the key. Right. is to find an alternative. But yeah, if there is an alternative, the faster we can go, the better off we are, right? I hope I answered your question.
Oui, tout à fait. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Kelly, I imagine you're at the same point. You would appreciate having support from the government for a transition of course, you need time to develop alternatives. Is it more of a problem for you? That's why I'm asking this question.
Our industry is getting people to understand who we are and what we do. There's been a great deal of development and technological advances in the propane industry.
Oui.
And when we look at the level of emissions that are coming from propane being burned today compared to what it was before, when you take a look at the advancement in vehicle usage, we now have school buses that are running on propane. We now have fleet buses that are running on propane. We have large courier companies that are using propane. So there's been a great advancements that have been made. The equipment that burns propane has been developing and advancing as time has gone on. And there's been a great deal of that. Where we see opportunities is for the government to look at new places for propane, like northern communities. Power generation. You're looking at power generation for small communities that may perhaps be off the grid. When you're looking at replacing diesel in northern communities with propane can be transported in exactly the same manner as diesel fuel for those communities. Those are the types of things where we see the opportunities in propane.
OK. Donc, vous considérez, dans le fond, c'est ça, que le propane fait partie.
So you consider that propane is part of the solution to replace diesel. Is that it? But why do you believe that the government did not exempt propane from the tax? Why do you think at the time the legislators did not exempt propane from the tax?
Oversight. I don't believe that it was any kind of omission intentionally. I believe it was an oversight. Same as saying that gasoline and diesel can't be used for heating. Well, there are very few people, if any, that use gasoline and diesel for heating now. So, it's just a kind of a space in the legislation that I didn't believe was necessary. And it's the same as with the propane and natural gas emission. I believe it was an oversight in the original legislation. We've been meeting as an association with many different departments and members and ministerial staff to tell our story, and we're very pleased to see some of the progress that's taken place lately.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Merci, Monsieur Perron. And now, Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Merci.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. Mr. Amateur, maybe I'll start with you. I guess like diesel is used for some grain drying operations, is it not? I'm trying to get a sense of just, how many farmers might be using diesel at the moment to dry their grain.
To my understanding, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that. The dryer that I have, it was originally propane, and this is nothing against Mr. Kelly's product, but we have a pretty good natural gas distribution system, and I was able to tap into that. It's very close to our farm, which it was very convenient because natural gas does not need to be delivered by truck. It just comes in the pipeline, so that's good. So yeah, back to your question about diesel fuel, I'm not aware. That's not to say they don't exist, but I would suggest that the vast majority are propane powered, propane fired, or natural gas. I have heard of people trying to do grain drying using straw. I guess it would come under the classification like a biomass, but I think it would just be a horrific amount of crop residue that you would have to burn in some kind of a container to contain the heat. And yeah, it's like I applaud the effort, but I don't think it works. I don't think it'd be very good.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was doing a search, and I'm a complete layperson when it comes to understanding the dynamics of grain drying. But there is a company I did find called Triple Green Products, and here on their website they say they've got a bio dryer air, which they think is superior because propane and natural gas both contain water vapor when you burn them. So you can actually be putting more water vapor into the grain, and their system does run on biomass. So I'm just wondering, when you're harvesting your canola, and I'm sure it's probably corn farmers who get the most residue. I mean, we all know corn stalks in relation to canola, but can you give me a sense of like when you're harvesting your canola and you've separated it, like how much crop residue are you left with, at the end of harvest?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough. Arguably, if I was gonna tell you, I'd try to give you a number in how many tons per acre. And quite frankly, I don't even know that.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you. But something I will go back just to your comment about drying with biomass, and that would be true. Because natural gas and propane, they will have some moisture in them. So that is something we have to account for when we're drying, just to know that it's not a true, like a dry heat. I mean, it's heat, but yeah, you're correct on that. I'm not aware of the company you referred to, but yeah, it would, I'm sure it would work. It's just, what volumes do you need to create the amount of heat that you need to dry? Like, and I kind of wish I had a picture for you folks. My grain dryer, like it's not like your clothes dryer. This thing, and some of them are massive. They are very, very big. And there's a lot of grain going through and a lot of air moving and a lot of fire. There's a very, very big fire inside my grain dryer.
Oh, I can believe it. I mean, I can see the size of the silos that you have to thrust that heat through. So you need a massive amount of heat coming out of that. well, maybe I'll rephrase the question. If there was a system which had proven technology, was very efficient with operating on biomass and became commercially successful, because I don't know how well this company's doing. How easy is it, or would there be an added burden to farmers to collect that residue while you're harvesting? I mean, is it easy for you now to collect the residue and put it in one location, which would then have it in a form to be used as a fuel?
Well, here's the challenge for crop residue. If I was going to collect the residue off my crops, canola, wheat, barley, and probably barley residue, barley straw would be the superior one, I would think. But I would have to have had that collected the year prior and ready to use in my grain dryer for this fall. Because when there's not a window of opportunity when I've harvested, the grain is ready to, it's ready to be combined. I harvest it, it's in the bin, it needs to be dried because weather conditions, whatever's happened, I need to dry it. I need to do it now. I can't wait to go out and collect the straw, bale it, move it off the field, get it into the yard, and start using it as a fuel source. So I would have to do that the year prior and be prepared for that. So extra layer of complications, I guess you would call it. But not to say it wouldn't work, but it would be complex and another pretty high level of management to, and then to anticipate that. How do I know?
And then, of course, the other thing too is you're going to be losing all of that carbon on your fields, which of course serves a very important purpose for the next year's crop, right?
Yeah. And that's a good point. The nutritional value of the straw and crop residue that comes off of my crops, there is value to that. There are nutrients in that, and like you mentioned, carbon. And now I've gone and I've burnt that to make heat.
Thank you, Mr. Amateur and Mr. McGregor. Thank you. And now, Mr. Steinley, second round, 5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Steinley.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the witnesses that have presented today, Dan, Mike, and Dave. I'm going to ask a few of my questions to the canola growers because Regina's had a lot of influx of canola crushing plants and a lot of good announcements lately, about $1.2 billion worth. So we're looking forward to having, like I said, being the canola crushing capital of Canada. A question I'd like to walk through is I don't think some of our colleagues realize how big these grain dryers are, Mike. And talking about biomass and Mr. McGregor, I take your point, but also then you don't calculate the machinery it takes to collect the biomass that's on the field, then transport that biomass to where the grain's actually located. Because these farms in Western Canada aren't 1,000 to 2,000 acres. There's 30, 40,000 acre farms, and they're trucking this product a long way. And like Mike said, you had the natural gas brought to the bin as to be more innovative and to be more environmentally friendly. So, Mike, I'd really just like you to walk us through the size of these bushels of the bins that are being dried and the size of the grain dryers. And the fact is, they're not like easily movable, right? You can't just decide one day you're going to pick up a 20,000 bushel bin and move it to a field closer to you. So just to kind of walk us through a little bit of how some of that infrastructure is permanent and not easily movable.
Well, you are correct. It is not movable. It is designed to sit in one spot. And I bring, and we're not a big farm, as you alluded to. Some of the size of the farms that would probably be in your area. Yeah, I'm like a hobby farm, but yeah, all these things are permanent structures. And if I was to adopt a grain drying system to collect my straw and my crop residue from the year previous, it would start with the year previous, and I would bale the straw. So I'm going to use a tractor and a baler, and I'm going to bale the straw. Now I've got bales all over my field, and I'm going to collect them with my tractor or my bale truck, and I'm going to drive them into my yard, and I'm going to stack them. And when it's time to use them, and heaven forbid that I have a fire off season and they all go up in flames, that has happened. And then you wouldn't want to talk about that because now I've got another problem. But
well, I have another point. And if you're taking off a crop that's already damp, the residue in the straw, if you bale that damp, is going to heat and maybe create one of those fires. Because if you're taking off canola that is already a little bit wet and you need to dry it with the grain dryer, you can't use the residue because that residue is going to be wet as well. Am I correct in saying that?
You're absolutely right. And quite often, I mean, we use a grain dryer it's a management tool, and I will dry grain early in the season. And not because it's a time management thing. It's not because it's been raining for 2 weeks. It's like, I want to get out there and get a jump on it. I got to get, because I've got other things that I need to do. It used to be a tool of last resort. And for a lot of times it still is. But quite often, like we've had a number of years in the last 7 or 8 years where it has snowed every third day in September and when everything's wet.
Yeah. And when you're using the grain dryer, it's not just a dryer, right? Because you're taking canola out of the bins, you're putting it into the bins, and it's not just static. So there's other machinery that you're using at the same time as the dryer, and that's also something you have to take into consideration when you're setting up a farm, because you also have to have room for trucks coming in and out for the movement of augers and not just the dryer. So if you could walk some of my colleagues through that process as well, because I really want them to get a good picture of what a big farm in this operation of drying grain really looks like.
Yeah, I guess a real big farm, you're going to have a farmyard that's probably 20 acres. I don't know if you can, maybe 30 acres, I don't know. And the grain bins are 30 feet in diameter, 50 feet tall. You got a whole bunch of them. And I'm talking a really, really big farm. And it's just, you've got big trucks coming in and out. You've got
I just want
a
to say
lot of space.
So when you say at this point in time, there aren't other options, that's why this bill is important. Right. There really is, for bigger farms, no other option to use natural gas or propane and grain dryers, and that's why this exemption for our big farmers is so important.
So that'll be the end of time. Sorry about that. We'll have to move to next one. Madame Bessette pour 6 minutes. Allez-y, Madame Bessette.
Merci, monsieur. Go ahead, Madame Bessette.
Pour 6
Vous avez raison.
35.
So I will start with Mr. Amater from the Canadian Canola Growers Association. So you told my colleague that you would be open to collaborating with the government in order to share costs associated to developing green technology. So what is your reaction regarding the spending announced in the budget, namely the additional $200 million invested in the Agricultural Solution Program?
Well, I think the initial reaction is, we would welcome assistance, if you will. Some of these things are very difficult to do on your own, and they're cost prohibitive, if you will. So I can't say that unless I have unless it's something that ties my hands greatly or really alters my operation to where it's like I'd like to participate, but this takes me in a direction that I don't know if I can accomplish. That's always a challenge of any kind of a partnership, I guess, if you call it that. But on the face of it, I don't see why we would be against anything of that nature. I would, if I could go back, there was a question to me a little earlier about this, a very similar question, and about government assistance in retrofitting grain dryers or making them more efficient, and there are undoubtedly some that could participate in that today. Offhand, I can't. Don't ask me to find someone for you, but I'm sure they're out there. We're always doing looking for efficiencies.
Thank you.
Do you think that with the exemption, there will always be an incentive to innovate or to buy greener equipment or more energy efficient equipment?
Well, energy efficient for sure. I think that's something we look for. We look for efficiencies all the time. If it adds to our bottom line, we will look for that. I've made a comment to people that so I'm a little bit off base here, but my combine is a very large piece of equipment, has a great big diesel engine in it. It's very large, and I said I'd like to live long enough to see if we can come up with an alternative to a big diesel powered engine. I'm not against that, but it's got to be efficient. It's got to be robust. It's got to do the job. And I'm sure, given enough time, we may figure that out. I don't see anything on the horizon, but I guess that's just my nature. I would be very interested to see if we could accomplish that, because we need a lot of horsepower. It takes an awful lot of power.
Thank you. One more question for you. Est-ce que l'exemption
Should the exemption be temporary so that we can find new solutions?
Well, I guess temporary let's put it this way, if we find a solution and we move away from carbon-based fuels, then there's no need for an exemption. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Monsieur Kelly, la prochaine.
Mr. Kelly, the next question is for you. I have 1 minute left. So what future do you see for the transition towards green energy? How many years do you think that will take? Green fuel.
Question. I see that it's going to go in stages depending on where technology is going to go. I think electrification is ultimately where we may end up, but it's going to take a long time to be able to develop the technologies that allow us to not only generate the power cleanly, but also store the power and to be able to use it in various forms. The Propane Association can offer some solutions today. And that's our story. We can help today to move away from high carbon fuels like gasoline and diesel, and move towards a cleaner alternatives. And it's inexpensive and abundant, and there's a lot of things we can do with it. I think that we could be looking at an extended period of time, but I think there's transitions along that timeline that we can hit some milestones that'll certainly move us in the right direction.
Thank you very much.
Merci, Lynn. Monsieur Perron pour 2 minutes et demie. Allez-y, Monsieur Perron.
Merci.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, earlier we spoke of the fact that clean fuel was part of the solution. What is the impact on your industry if C206 is not adopted?
Impact for our industry is not as significant as the impact it's going to be for farmers. I believe you've got a clean, abundant fuel that is not being treated in the same manner as higher carbon intensive fuels. And I think that can't be lost in the discussion. I believe that we need to broaden the discussion on what propane can offer. And propane can do a great deal to help support the transition to that green environment. There's a lot of things we can do today. There's a lot of things we can do in 5 years from now. And we're not going to find the electrification solution tomorrow, but we're going to find it in the future. And there's a transition that we can follow that leads us to that place. And there's a great deal that the propane can offer that will help us to get to that place.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. So that's what I was expecting. As an energy distributor, you're going to have your clients pay for the carbon tax. Mr. Amateur, what will be the impact for your industry if the government fails to pass C206?
We are expected to absorb our share of the carbon tax that's put onto our grain drying and our irrigation pumps. Ultimately, it's just I have less money. And if the only place I get my money is from the crops that I sell, and if one of my priorities is to do upgrades on my grain drying equipment, I have less money to do that. And so that means it probably will delay it. And, you know, as the carbon tax goes up, it just
Est-ce qu'on peut craindre
Do you think that certain productions could disappear? Do you think small producers would disappear if Bill 206 is not adopted by Parliament?
Well, it would make it tougher on them. I mean, smaller producers, yeah, they don't have as much capacity to absorb any hits of that nature, and yeah, it's probably tougher on them. Yeah, than a larger one.
Thank you, Mr. Amity. Merci, Mr. Perron. And now, Mr. McGregor, for 2.5 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. McGregor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Amateur, I guess what I would like to know is, I mean, we've referred to the harvest from hell, and we know that, you know, with our farmers being on the front lines of climate change, you know, there will be an increase in extreme weather events. I guess, you know, if you look at the last several decades, and when farmers have had to start engaging their grain dryers, like has the trend been sort of more and more use of grain dryers over time? And I guess, do you expect that trend to continue going on in the future? I guess I'm just trying to put this in the context of, you know, if you're having to engage your grain dryers sooner than you'd like, for longer than you would like, just trying to extrapolate what the costs will be if we continue down with this trend.
Yeah, I don't know if I could comment on the costs per se. It's such a variable, but you know, and there again, it could be, and I've mentioned before that we do, one of the things that we do see in agriculture as well is weather cycles, and we've had I'd say 10 to 15 kind of tough years, and it's quite possible that could turn around. I know one of the things that we were told when I first heard of climate change, global warming, etc. One of the things that was kind of posed for us on the prairies, and so where I live, I'm actually very close to the Rocky Mountains. I'm high elevation. I'm 3,300 feet. And I mean, it doesn't sound good by today's narrative, but it's like, that is good news for me if the climate warms a bit, because I'm always struggling with a short growing season. But as far as using more and more grain dryers, I think people have them because they need to, and they just recognize the value of them. And, you know, the worst place to be is to be in the middle of a bad harvest and you aren't prepared with a grain dryer. Like, you are very, very vulnerable, and it can mean your production, you know, huge losses for your production. So I hope that helped.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would trigger our business risk management programs, which would end up costing even more in the long run to the government as well. So yeah.
True. Yeah, true.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor, and thank you, Mr. Amity. And that concludes our second panel. And I really want to thank the Canadian Canola Grower Association, Mr. Mike Amity, and also Mr. Dave Carey for being here today. Thank you so much. And also Dowler Carn Limited, Mr. Kelly. Thanks for coming in today to share your thoughts on our study. So that'll conclude that, and I'd like the members to just stick around for a few minutes so we can finish a few items of business. And we'll start with Bill C-206. The officials have been invited. They've agreed to do a one opening statement for all of them. So with not each, so we have three departments. We have agriculture, we have environment, and I believe we have finance as a third one. So they'll have one opening statement, and then we can go into the question rounds with that. So hopefully that's agreeable with everyone. I don't know if there's any issues with that, but if not, we'll adopt that model. I see that I don't see any opposition. So, and the next thing we have to do is approve the press release. I think you've all received a copy of the press release from the processing capacity report. If it's all okay with everyone, we'll approve that, and we'll release that as soon as we have tabled the report, I would assume. Any comments on the press release? Anything that is it all good with everyone? Okay, seeing no comments, I would think that we're all good with that. And finally, we have to approve the budget for C205. I believe everyone has received a copy of the budget, a pretty standard practice. So the total is $3,350 for that budget. Are we? I guess we'd need I don't know if we need a motion, but we need a consensus to approve the budget. Are we all okay with the budget? Just show your thumbs or
I'm
hand.
good, Pat. You can't see me, but I'm here.
Oh, you're there? Okay.
The voice of God, I promise.
You were the one I was most concerned with, so that's great. We heard you. So, okay, clerk is good with that. So that is all I have, unless there's anything else from the clerk or anyone else. If not, great meeting, guys, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you and have a good evening. Bonsoir.